Okay, guys, we have got language paper one coming up on Friday. Today is Wednesday. So, in 2 days' time, on the 23rd of May, you'll have language paper one. So, what I'm going to do for you guys today is a complete breakdown of all of the questions. So, we'll start with question one, and you should do this one in about 3 to 5 minutes. It says, read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 6. You don't even need to have read the whole source yet. You can just read lines 1 to 6, list 4 things about hyenas from this part of the source. So you go to the source and you find 4 separate things about hyenas. Don't repeat yourself. Make sure they are full sentences and make sure they are only from lines 1 to 6. Only from lines 1 to 6, not outside. So I can see it was the hyena that worried me. I had not forgotten father's words. Hyenas attack in packs. There's one thing. They need to be full sentences, guys, but they can be very simple. Hyenas attack in packs. They go for zebras, gnus, and water buffaloes. There's another one. Keep going. And not only the old or the infirm in a herd, but full grown members too. They are hardy attackers. That's another one. Again, very short sentences, guys, but make sure they're about hyenas. Whatever's in the question, this one, hyenas. And they are hardy attackers, rising up from buttings and kickings immediately, never giving up, and they are clever. So that will be my last one. They are clever. So just make sure you have full sentences, guys, but they can be very short. And make sure you don't go outside of these lines. And make sure they're about whatever the question says. Hyenas, or whatever the question says. But there you go. That's 4 easy marks for you. So now we're going to go on to question 2, the language analysis. I recommend about 8 to 10 minutes for this one. Now, what you need to do, guys, to get marks in this one, first, read what the question says. How does the writer use language here to describe the hyena's appearance? So we see it's about the hyena's appearance. That's the information we're looking for. So you want to find about 2 to 3 quotes that relate to this. For example, I can see I'm not one to hold a prejudice against any animal, but it's a plain fact that the spotted hyena is not well served by its appearance. It is ugly beyond redemption. That's a nice one. Its shaggy, coarse coat is a bungled mix of colors, with the spots having none of the classy ostentation of a leopard's. They look rather like the symptoms of a skin disease. That's another good one. So we'll just do 2 for now, guys. But if you struggle to explain the effects, get a third one so that you can still provide enough detail to get top marks. So what you need to do in this question, guys, is zoom in on as many language techniques as possible. As many language techniques as possible. That means metaphors, similes, personification, hyperbole, imagery, and so on. Also, zoom in on as many word types as possible. Word types, adjectives, adverbs, nouns, verbs. Show what you know, guys, because it's all about language analysis. And then you want to explain the effects of these techniques and word types. What are the connotations? What are the effects on the atmosphere or the tone? Or what does it tell you about the character? What does it mean about the character? What does it tell you about the setting? And what is the reader's response? What do we feel? What do we think? Do we have any questions? And so on. Does it remind us of something? Anything. So provide detail and don't repeat yourself. Don't just repeat the words from the quote. It's ugly beyond redemption. That means it's ugly. No, you need to think of synonyms. You need to try and not repeat yourself. So let's look. We can start off by saying the writer describes the hyena's appearance with the hyperbolic phrase ugly beyond redemption. It's hyperbole. It's saying so ugly, it suggests that the hyena is so ugly, it's beyond saving. It's almost unbearable, representing the worst and most hated in the animal kingdom. Now I'm going to zoom in on something about that quote. I could zoom in on the phrase beyond redemption. the phrase beyond redemption has biblical connotations. Redemption is almost like religious language, biblical or religious connotations, presenting the hyena as monstrous, like almost evil and demonic. Moreover, the adjective ugly reinforces its attractive and unattractive, and highly unpleasant physical appearance. So that's one. I'm going to do the next one now. Moreover, the writer describes the hyena's appearance using the simile like the symptoms of a skin disease. The imagery of a skin disease suggests that the hyena looks extremely unhealthy and even repulsive. So you might think of like a really disgusting skin disease, and it triggering a reader's fear of infection and contagious diseases, or catching a contagious disease. The choice of the noun, I'm zooming in on something now. Another thing, I've already zoomed in on skin disease. I want you guys to zoom in on everything possible. Make the quote work. Make it work. Rinse it for all that it's worth. The choice of the noun symptoms emphasizes that something looks visibly wrong with the hyena's appearance, as if it's suffering or diseased, or suffering or very ill, very unwell. Just so I don't repeat that word again. As such, the reader may feel both disgusted and sympathetic. Disgusted by the unsettling image, but sympathetic towards an animal which appears to be in such poor condition. So let's see, guys. I've zoomed in on many language techniques. I've said hyperbole. I have said a phrase. I have said an adjective. I've described the simile, the imagery, the noun. So I've done 6 different language techniques or word types. I've explained the effects. I've said what it tells you about the hyena's appearance as a character, how it presents them, and the connotations of particular words. I've also talked about the connotations of skin disease, and then touched on the reader's response, what we might be feeling when we hear this description. And I've gone into the emotional response there. So that would be a top level answer, guys. Simple, very simple. So let's go on to question 3, the structure analysis question. So structure analysis, it says, how has the writer structured the text to create suspense? So what you need to do, guys, is find structural techniques from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the text. So you should know your structural techniques now, but definitely look them up so you get more confident with them. But I will show you for this one. So I'll look at the beginning, and I'll see that at the beginning of the text, it says, it was the hyena that worried me. So immediately, something's threatening is there. The hyena's worrying him. So we can say it starts in media res. In media res, there's action straight away. That's the structural technique at the beginning. But also, I have not forgotten father's words. Hyenas attacking packs, blah, blah, blah. So the father's words, he's flashing back to the father's words. So we got in media res and flashback at the beginning. So that's the beginning covered. The middle could be anywhere from here all the way to the end, really. But anything that strikes your attention in the middle, like here, it shifts the focus by zooming into the hyena, for example. Or at this point, we see some short sentences here. I was hoping the hyena would stay. I was disappointed. I prepared for my end for nothing. It started running in circles again. So there's a lot of short sentences there that reflect Pi's anxiety. So I'm going to highlight the short sentences in the middle. Now, at the end, we haven't read it all, guys, but there's this tension. Is the hyena going to attack Pi? Is he going to be safe? What will he do if the hyena attacks him? Because he's got nowhere to run. But at the end, something happens. Something happens. It says, abruptly, the hyena vomited. A gush landed behind the zebra. The hyena dropped into what it had just produced. It stayed there, shaking and whining and turning around on itself, and it didn't move again. So this is what you call a twist, an anticlimax, a twist. So that's what happens at the end. The beginning in media res, flashback, the middle, short sentences, the end, anticlimax, and twist. So we've got structural techniques from the beginning, middle, and end. That's fine. And then we're going to explain the effects on the atmosphere of the story, what it tells you about the character, the setting, the plot, what it does for the plot. Does it speed it up, slow it down? And the effects on the reader. What does it make us feel? What does it make us think about? What questions do we have? And so on. So let's write it, guys. We can say the writer opens the text in media res to create immediate suspense, and always try and be specific what's going on at that moment in the encounter between Pi and the hyena. So we know, so the examiner knows you have read it. You know, you're not just saying in what's going on. You're saying what is going on. There's an encounter between Pi and the hyena. So the writer includes details. Give short quotes, guys, actually. That's one other thing I should mention. Short references. Like 1 or 2 words here and there, just to illustrate your points. The writer includes details of it was the hyena that worried me, and they attack any animal that can be run down. So that's it. Now I'm going to explain a little bit of the effects here. I could say this, what does it tell me about the character? It reveals Pi's fear because by showing us that he already understands how dangerous hyenas can be due to his father's past warnings. And I'll touch on the reader's effect as well. Like it may evoke tension and fear in a reader as we can sense the threat early on. I'm also going to do another technique here. It's like zooming in on another structural method. It could be a flashback, it could be a sentence structure, it could be anything. So the use of the flashback at the start, it kind of slows the pace down and provides background information to help emphasize the danger that Pi faces. And we'll do one more little explanation there. And I think actually, no, that's fine. That's fine. So now we'll go to the middle and say the writer later utilizes short, abrupt sentences to reflect Pi's frenzied mental state and increase suspense. The writer includes details of I was hoping it would stay under the tarpaulin. I was disappointed. And I prepared for my end for nothing. See, it's really important when you say the writer uses short sentences, give the exact short sentence you're talking about so you can really explain the meaning of that sentence. So what does this show about the character? It shows Pi's inner panic and helplessness as the hyena's unpredictable behavior causes him anxiety. It may also evoke suspense and urgency in the reader as we realize that Pi thinks he will be killed. And we could talk about, I think that's it for the middle. And now we'll do the end. So the writer, at the end, or the writer ends with an unexpected twist to subvert both Pi's and the reader's expectation. The writer, we could say, states abruptly, it vomited and it started shaking and whining and turning around on itself. This reveals that the hyena was not preparing to attack, but was actually ill and distressed. That's what it tells you about the character. Let's bring it back to the effect on the reader, because a lot of this, guys, is about how has the writer structured the text to create some kind of feeling on the reader. So we could say was not actually ill and distressed. It may release the tension for the reader and evoke a sense of surprise or even pity towards the animal. And finally, we might zoom in on the other aspect, like the anticlimactic structural twist changes the focus and slows the pace down, reflecting Pi's replacing this. Yeah, I would just say slows the pace down, replacing the suspense with a subdued ending. So there you go, guys. That would be a very high mark answer because we've highlighted many structural techniques. We've highlighted the fact that it's in media res. We've also said we said flashback. We said short, abrupt sentences. We talked about unexpected twist. We talked about anticlimactic structural twist as well. I would probably highlight as well this triplet. That's all. Well, actually, yeah, that's a structural thing there. So we've got many different structural techniques. We've given short references to back up each one, and we've covered the beginning, middle, and end. And of course, we've explained the effects on the atmosphere. We've explained the effect on the character, what it presents about the hyena or Pi. Also, it tells us, we've told them what it does for the plot, like slows this pace down or speeds it up. And also the effects on the reader, like how it creates tension or actually releases the tension or creates urgency or creates a sense of threat and so on. So that's what we do, guys. That would be a top answer there. Okay, now we're on to question 4, guys. So you would have actually about 22.5 minutes for this one. So you're going to first read the question and understand what the statement is. In this one, it says, this part of the story where the hyena behaves wildly is funny rather than frightening. The writer suggests that the hyena is no serious threat to Pi. So you think about that statement, you think about the section, lines 20 to the end, which is from here to the end. And you want to now find evidence to support your opinion. What's your opinion on the statement? And then find as much evidence as you can. So language and structure, 2, or I would say, 1 or 2 per paragraph, and maybe even 2 per paragraph. And really what you're going to structure as is an introduction expressing your overall opinion, 3 to 4 petal paragraphs, which are going to maybe agree, and then disagree or partly disagree, and structure it like that. And every point that you make for each paragraph and every link that you make at the end must express an opinion on the statement. That's really key for evaluation. You must express your opinion. I agree. I disagree. I partly agree, and so on. So we've seen this now. We can actually use evidence from question 3. From question 3, we can use some evidence there. That's fine for this answer. And what I know was we had an anticlimax at the end. An anticlimax at the end. Abruptly, it vomited. It stayed there shaking and whining and turning around on itself. That's 2 bits of evidence there. And that suggests the hyena is no serious threat. So we've got something that agrees with that. But we do need to find more evidence. We do need to find more. So for example, we go back to line 20. I can see nearly immediately it leapt over the zebra. Then it turned on itself, whimpering and hesitating, blah, blah, blah. I can see here it says yip, 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 yip in a high-pitched way. For me, that noise, the fact it's high-pitched, could also agree that it's funny rather than frightening. So I've got one bit of evidence for that. It's funny, not frightening. I can also see the fact that it started running in circles again, or yeah, where was it? Yeah, it ran around the zebra in a circle. It started running in circles again. So it's running in circles again and again and again. That imagery is also suggesting it's kind of funny and a bit ridiculous, not frightening. So I've got two bits of evidence for this to agree and two bits of evidence for this to agree. But I would like to find I want to write one more paragraph with a bit of balance, where I say I partly disagree with something. So, for example, I can see here it calls the hyena a beast. It says it was no small animal. It says the beating of its legs against the benches made the whole boat shake. So we can see here, it doesn't seem that friendly, does it? It seems a bit dangerous. It seems like it could cause you some harm if it really wanted to. So I'm going to partly disagree that it's no serious threat. I'm going to say, it clearly could be a threat, but ultimately it wasn't. So now what you're going to do, you found your evidence. You're going to be highlighting, making sure you're finding language and structure. We've clearly found language. We found onomatopoeia and repetition, and we found adjectives there. We've also found imagery there and powerful verbs. We've also found the anticlimax, which is structural, and we've also found the word choice in the triplets, which is structural, and the verbs again, which is language. So I'm saying a lot there, but we found a lot of language and structure. So now let's start it off, guys. We can start off with a thesis statement, an introduction, which tells us or tells the examiner our overall opinion. That's really good for this question because it's all about evaluation. What is evaluation? Is giving your opinion, but backing it up with evidence. So we're going to give our opinion here. I'm going to say, whilst it is certainly the case that the hyena behaves in a wild, so I'm going to talk about this, in a wild and chaotic way. So one more thing I would like to mention is use keywords from the question, from the statement. So that shows that you're giving an opinion on the statement. So in a wild and chaotic way, I would question whether its behavior is funny rather than frightening. On the one hand, it's clear that the hyena lacks control or direction, which creates moments of humor and absurdity. But on the other hand, it does initially seem to pose a threat to Pi, at least in his own mind. However, by the end, this threat does not materialize at all. So we've given our overall opinion on the statement. We haven't given any evidence yet. So think about including these introductions, guys, so that you're clearly given a strong opinion on the statement right from the start. So now let's give our first main body paragraph. As I said, it needs to start by expressing my opinion and using keywords from the statement. So I'm going to start off with, I agree with the students. I agree with the statement. I agree with the statement's assertion that the hyena's behavior is funny rather than frightening. Assertion just means like conclusion. Because of the ridiculous and frantic description. So the writer's use of onomatopoeia, yip, 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 in a high-pitched way, suggests that the hyena isn't growling or snarling aggressively, but simply making a light and squeaky noise. This implies a nervous and excitable energy rather than violent intentions. Now I'm going to zoom in. So remember, your analysis here is the same. You're going to do your normal analysis. You just need to frame it with your opinion as well. You need to sandwich it in with your opinion statements. So rather than violent intentions, the phrase high pitched has connotations of something childish and silly, which may make the scene humorous to the reader. See, I've touched back onto the idea of it being funny, not frightening. So if you can link back to the statement whenever possible, that keeps it very focused on the question. So we'll keep going. It may seem humorous to the reader. Moreover, now this is my next bit of evidence. The writer states that all morning the hyena ran in circles, then stopped and started running in circles again. So this repetition of the aimless action that the aimless action of running in circle of going in circles reinforces the idea that the animal is confused, disorientated, or even stupid rather than dangerous. So now, as I said, the link back needs to go back to your opinion about the statement. So as such, I agree that this part of the story is more amusing than terrifying. Try and use different synonyms if you can. Funny, amusing, frightening, terrifying. Due to the hyenas, unpredictable, but non-threatening behavior. So, okay, guys, that's one agreement paragraph. We're going to continue, though, by talking about, I might give the balanced bit now as well, actually. So I can say, however, I would challenge the idea. So I'm giving that opinion again, that the hyena poses no threat. I'm relating to the statement, no serious threat, as its physical prowess and impact on the boat is demonstrated vividly. The writer tells us how the beating of its legs against the benches made the whole boat shake, which powerfully describes its strength and ability to make a dramatic and noticeable, dramatic impact, dramatic effect on the boat, causing it to shake and vibrate despite its large size. A reader can insinuate that simply by running at a quick pace around the boat, it's the animal is able to impact and forcefully move the boat and everything upon it. Moreover, let's zoom in on something more. Remember, keep on zooming in on everything that you can. Moreover, the use of the verb beatings, or the violent verb beatings, implies an inherently vicious nature as well as an evident threat. Well, I'm going to say which, combined with the high speed, with the animal's high energy, poses an evident threat. So that's my next opinion one. So I'm going to say, as such, I would disagree. I would partially disagree with the notion that the hyena poses no serious threat, as it's clearly capable of harming other creatures. Nevertheless, so this is my last paragraph there. Nevertheless, ultimately, I do agree that the hyena's threat does not materialize due to its illness. Indeed, by the end of the extract, so I'm going to use the structural techniques I found before. The writer includes a anticlimax as the hyena is reduced to shaking and whining and turning around on itself. This triplet of verbs, well, this is a triplet, and it also emphasizes the weakness, the physical weakness and helplessness of the hyena, suggesting it's in a loop of growing stress and deterioration, literally incapable of posing a threat to Pi in any way. I'm going to zoom in on more verbs. The pairing of the verbs shaking and whining suggests that the hyena is very feeble and fragile, struggling to even stay upright due to its unknown but serious ailment, and is probably in a great deal of pain. So I'm gonna say anticlimax says a hyena abruptly vomits and is reduced to. So I'm probably in a great deal of pain. So now I'm going to finalize with my opinion then again, because remember the links need to express opinion. And because my last statement, I might go into a bit more depth here and say, as such, whilst I do believe that the hyena has the potential to be a serious threat to Pi, due to its illness and physical weakness, it doesn't actually pose any danger, and in fact completely succumbs to the effects of its disease. So there you go, guys. One introductory paragraph, 3 main body paragraphs, each of them giving an opinion on the statement, with lots of language and structure references to back up my ideas, and lots of references back to the question. So let's see. When have I given my opinions here? All of this is my opinion here. I've said opinion there in my point sentence. I have used the keyword there, funny, humorous. Definitely use synonyms. That's a really good thing to do. And here I've given my link back where I said it's more amusing than terrifying. Then I give a clear opinion here. And I summarize with an opinion there. And then I give my opinion at the beginning of this last paragraph. And I keep on relating back to that key question word, the threat to Pi. And obviously here, this is a whole opinion there. So you can see it's very structured around giving opinions on the statement and backing up with reasons. Then obviously my quotes, I've given a quote here, and I've highlighted onomatopoeia. I've highlighted the phrase. Let's look at the techniques. Onomatopoeia, phrase, repetition. Powerful description. Violent verb. Anticlimax and anticlimax. Pairing of the verbs. Triplet of verbs. So you can see there is a lot of language and structural methods I've found. I've given lots of evidence, a rich range of evidence. And as such, it would be a very strong answer, guys. So that's question 4. It is a demanding question. So make sure you give it the time it deserves, because you can get 20 marks. 20 marks are available here. That's question 1, 2, and 3 combined. So although I've gone into depth here, don't spend more than 10 minutes on question 2 and 3 because you can't get that many marks. Give more time to question 4 and definitely question 5. Okay, now we're on to creative writing, guys. And you can choose a description or a story. So what you do, you get marks in this one is finding having a range of ideas, having a character, having a plot, having a setting. The character's got an internal world and they have behaviors. The plot has a clear beginning, middle, and end. And the setting is clear where we are and it's very immersive. A lot of sensory details, the 5 senses. Then there's ambitious vocabulary. So it's good to pre-prepare and learn a lot of vocabulary that you can use. You've got language techniques, you can find them online as well. Just get comfortable using them. And the structural features, there's clear paragraphing. You have one-line paragraphs for emphasis. And you have a cyclical structure, perhaps, where it ends in a way that it begins with like one sentence, the same at the beginning and at the end. And then you have a range of punctuation, dashes, semicolons, full stops, commas, all accurate. And you have a range of sentence structures, long, short, with different starters, different beginning words, and they're all accurate. And that's what the examiner is looking for, guys. So I'm going to choose this one, write a story about a human meeting an animal. So it's good to write a brief plan so we know what we're talking about and we can think of some powerful language to use or language techniques. So we're ready to go. Anything that we learned before this test, write it down so you know that you're going to use that word or that technique. So for example, I'm going to start off with like a boy in a jungle, and I might use some technique talking about the heavy air of the jungle pressed in from all sides. The heat was suffocating and dense. So we got some kind of metaphor there and some powerful verbs. Then what the main thing is going to be, the animal, he meets a black panther. And it's going to be, I'm going to say, a deep growl or a deep primal growl. So resonant, it felt like it came from inside his own chest. So that's going to be that. Then the twist is going to be they actually become friends, or there's like more of a connection between them. They have a connection, and what is going to be is we're going to think about maybe I'm going to say the menace in its gaze softened just a little. The eyes blinked once slowly. Then, unbelievably, it meowed. So I've got some nice sentence structures varying there. And the end is going to be that he gets found, because it's going to be like the boy is lost in the jungle. It's going to be he gets found by the guide. So I'm going to say, Jake spun round and his relief surged. But when he turned back, the panther had vanished into the jungle's verdant shadows. So you see, what's really good about a plan, before you actually write your answer, before you actually have your exam, it's good to write stories and plans beforehand. And then practice adapting your plan and your high level story to different prompts, because the prompts are very flexible. For example, this plan that I've made about a boy lost in a jungle and becoming friends with a black panther could be adapted to many different prompts. It could be adapted to a question about adventure. It could be adapted to a prompt about an unexpected event. And it could be adapted to anything about mystery or anything like that. So try to create plans which are very flexible and write stories that can be adapted to many prompts. Make sure it's a high level. You can use AI, you can use online resources, improve it to a high level. And then you're going into the exam with a plan, and you're going to feel more confident if you've got things to fall back on. So what we're going to do, we can start off with a one-line sentence. We'll say, he knew he should have listened to the guide. For the 1,000th time, he changed direction, heart pounding with every uncertain step. He rued his reckless, arrogant decision to leave the group, and explore alone. I'll probably say his reckless decision, the arrogant decision, mocking or echoing around his mind and mocking him like a curse. The heavy air of the jungle pressed in from all sides. The heat was suffocating and dense. Each breath came harder than the last. His lungs crushed by the oppressive furn, crushed by an oppressive furnace. What had once been a clear path was now a twisted snarl of dirty, gnarled roots and vicious, razor-edged vines. So you see this description here, guys. I've actually used that before. So if you come up with good story sections as well, like high-level nature descriptions or setting descriptions, you can use that again as well in many different stories. So oversized leaves formed grotesque mounds underfoot, smothered by thick, ominous webs, taut and trembling, spun by some unknown venomous, we'll just say inhabitant. Jake's once white t-shirt now hung from him like a damp rag. Its color morphed to a grimy gray. So now we've given some setting, right? Now we're giving more characterization. We've already given his internal thoughts, and now we're giving some physical description as well, and some more internal emotions. So we say liters of sweat streamed from his body, instantly absorbed into the jungle's deep, dense foliage. The initial thrill of adventure had long since, and this is another technique I actually found from AI, an emotion, that change. You can say the emotion had curdled into a simmering other emotion. So his initial joy had curdled into a simmering anxiety. His initial thrill had curdled into a simmering dread. An an alien feeling for someone who was usually the picture of composure. He had a phone, but no signal at all. No signal. No map. No idea of where he was on this earth. Then it came. See my one-line paragraph there. So you see why it's a good hook, because a little one-line sentence, the hook needs to make us have questions. You can show, not tell, or you can withhold some information. Either way here, we want to know why did he have to listen to the guide? What has he done wrong? So it's intrigued it there. I've given some really good setting description there, mixed with his characterization as well. And I've varied the sentence structures a lot. And here's a one-line paragraph. So this is going to be the introduction of the panther. I'll say a deep, primal growl, so resonant, it felt like it came from within his own chest. Instantly, the hairs on his arms stood upright. He froze. He froze. Yeah, he froze. Turning slowly, he found himself staring at a nightmare. blood red eyes, unblinking and wild, and a maw of teeth, not really teeth, more jagged, yellowed blades, aggressively pointing in his direction from the colossal head of a black beast. Actually, and more of teeth, not really teeth, more jagged, more so jagged yellow blades, aggressively pointing in his direction from the colossal head of a black beast. A panther. Jake had always thought panthers were majestic. Oh yeah, sorry. Panthers were majestic. They were powerful. They were cool. He'd seen the movie, but this was something different. It was terror incarnate, a long buried primeval fear, older than any language, screamed through his nervous system. Run, hide, prepare to die. Yeah, run, hide, maybe submit. His thoughts were in pieces. His body tensed into a statue. He was locked in place. So we've got a nice triplet, one line paragraph as well. And then it moved. In one liquid, devastating motion, the creature's body, pure muscle wrapped in obsidian. Obsidian is a color for black. So it's good to know some other high-level color words as well. Closed the gap between them. Jake's scream caught somewhere between his lungs and throat, stuck in a rising tide of overwhelming panic. But it didn't strike him. Instead, the beast halted mere inches from him, its massive frame emanating restrained power. It tilted its head curiously, the menace in its gaze softened just a little. The eyes blinked once slowly. Then, unbelievably, it meowed. A low, throaty sound, not the high-pitched, babyish vocalization of a domestic cat, but unmistakably feline. His brain, still flooded with adrenaline, tried to make sense of this impossibility. He had lived with cats all his life. He knew their rhythms, their quirks, their silent language. So, with trembling fingers, he reached out and absurdly stroked its head. The panther flinched slightly, processed, then leaned in. It began to purr. A thunderous rumble rolled from its chest, vibrating the air and rattling was named Jake's rib cage. A strange peace settled over him. Well, settled over him. Yeah, settled in him. Part, mm, part or, part disbelief, part, yeah, part connection. This moment hung in the air for what seemed like a lifetime until Jake heard a voice. Hello, hello, my friend. Are you there? The guide's familiar shouts cut sharply through the unforgiving undergrowth. Jake spun round. His relief surged. But when he turned back, the panther was gone, vanished into the jungle's verdant shadows, silent and swift as a ghost. All that remained to this day was the echo of its purr in his bones. So there you go, guys. That would be a creative writing piece there. I have got a range of ideas. I've touched on the character. I've got a clear plot. I haven't ended in a really rushed way. I've kind of ended in quite an emphatic way. I have got a nice setting. I've got good, ambitious vocabulary, a range of language techniques like metaphors, emotive language, imagery, personification, and so on. Structural features, lots of one-line paragraphs, clear paragraphing. Then my punctuation, my sentences are all varied and they're all accurate. So this has to be a top-level answer. And guys, remember, you can borrow from this, borrow from other people's writings, but start to create flexible plans. Start to write stories so you have high level sections you can repurpose and practice writing stories so you get confident. And any prompt that comes up, you're ready to go. So, all right, guys, good luck for your exam on Friday. Let me know if you've got any questions. Please get in touch with me on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. I'll be more than happy to help.